Now I'm going to show you a demonstration. We're going to actually do an illustration of an eye, and I'm going to show you some of the techniques in actual practice. A little pencil drawing. I'm not even sure if it shows on the camera. And I lightened it up a little bit with a kneaded eraser. I used a 3H graphite pencil. Okay, now here what I want to show, first I'm going to outline a little bit, and this is what I call soft outlining. I'm using a micron here. This is a 0.23 setup, so this shows you that you can run this paint. Although it's not straight out of the bottle, I prefer to thin my paint, but you can run it direct. It's designed to be sprayed straight out of the bottle. I have it thinned out at about 1:1, and the one part of reducer is actually more of what I call, it's kind of a mixing medium, and it's basically one part of the reducer to one part of the transparent base. And that's a good starting point. That's where I like to start. Now here I'm doing, this is all soft outlining. Okay, I'm going to show you how you start getting a little soft, and you want to, as long as you do everything light about what we have here, you can start sharpening up some stuff. You can clean up a lot of these lines here. You can start putting some texture. I like to start doing a lot of the texture when it's very, very light, and then I build it up gradually. So I just want to keep building up some of this light texture here. Okay, now I'm going to enhance that texture with a little bit of erasing. So think of it as a little shadow and a highlight. Okay, and here on the eyelash. And here I'm almost doing a cross hatch. Okay. Now I'm using that cross hatch pattern, and I'm highlighting it almost, if you could imagine, almost like a little waffle pattern. But you can soften it up a little bit and don't do it so perfectly. Now I'm going to enhance some of this texture, freehand, and I'll take away some of that perfect square waffle pattern. And then as you're coming over here, give it some almost like stretch lines here. They're kind of directional with the fold in the eyelid here. Another thing is, this is it's sort of a middle flesh tone, a little bit on the lighter side. So even if I got really dark here, the contrast wouldn't be, it still wouldn't be too strong. So the idea here is to stay a little safe and stay in the middle tones, and we can darken as we need later on. Over here, let's do some more directional lines here. And let's enhance these. Another thing, sometimes it's, I'm actually moving pretty quick here, but sometimes it works a little bit better if you let it dry a little bit more. It tends to erase a little easier. If it's still wet, all you're going to do is just move the color around. I'm going to thin this out a little bit more because I want a little bit finer lines now. Now we could start filling in some color. You don't have to worry about getting too dark because I took care of that by adding some white in the color. Okay, let's dry this up a little bit and see if there's anywhere we can put some more, like in the tear ducts. You want to get that to look nice and wet. So let's see if we could put some highlights in there. We define this edge a little bit. Nice little wet spot here on the eye. Sometimes, even though I'm going to do the eye a greenish color, sometimes you could start building up some of the tone and some of the shading and volume with some of this color, almost like an underpainting.
Shoulder.
It's erasing very nicely now. See, it seems to be there's a certain film build that is ideal for some of the. If it's too thin, it doesn't seem to erase as well, I'm finding. Now this technique that we're doing, it's good when you have the paint, like I said, at the perfect film build. If it's too thick, it becomes a little bit the erasing becomes too abrupt, or if it's too dark, I should say. Sometimes the erasing looks too abrupt. So you got to kind of get the right tone. Then after that, it gets to a point where erasing, it's almost not going to work anymore. You know, I use it as a kind of a texture effect in a certain point in the painting. And once I get to another point, I can't use it like it. Once I start coming in with some of the darker colors, if I start doing some of this erasing, it's going to look way too abrupt. Like even there, right there, it's starting to get to that point. You know, there's other things that we haven't talked about. There's also, you know, erasing texture, and then sometimes you can use white paint to build texture. When you're using the white paint, you have to be careful, because that's when you start getting some of those that color shifting that you get when you use the white. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. It tends to give all the lightened areas a bluish hue, and sometimes it can make a painting look like it's been repaired, or it just doesn't have that professional look, like you could say. But there are ways to use it, and there are, like in some cases, before I start, sometimes you get too abrupt with your white highlights, and you want to soften them up. If you're going to do that, the trick is to do it when the painting is in a not so dark tone. Like for instance, right now I could come in, if these were too abrupt, they're pretty good now, but if they did come out too abrupt, I could soften them up with some white paint before I go in with some of the darker layers. Because once you get in with the darker layers, that's when you really start getting that blue shift when you do with the white. So remember now, just to recap a little bit, I reduced the paint about 1:1, and then as I started painting, I realized that I needed to thin it out a little bit more, and then I probably went to about 3:1 at that point, 3 parts of reducer to 1 part of color. Okay. And now, also my color was thinned out, and it was also lightened. So it was buffered a little bit with some white. And then on top of that, I'm not using it full saturation. Here is an area where you might see that it's fully saturated. But see all these tones I'm getting with this light color. Or I should say with this dark color. So you don't have to do full saturation. That's actually, you know, that's all depends on preference. I like to build my colors. Some artists, they match their colors perfectly, and they'll go ahead and they'll use full saturation, and that works also. But I'm showing you how you can layer your colors and get very, very similar effects. Okay. Okay, we've got the middle tone down now, and now I got a darker color that I'm going to come in with. But I want to tell you that you can take this as far as you want. You can do a bunch of tones in between. You can mix as many middle tones or in-between tones as you want. And also you can go further with the erasing. You can do some erasing with this color also. But right now I'm switching to actually the high performance reducer, because I feel like I have enough texture that now all I need to do is deepen some of the colors and get some of the shadows, get some of the volume in the painting. So now I'm just going to go in with this color, and let's get right to it. Here you can get an idea of how dark this color is. See, now with the high performance reducer, I'm able to go a little bit finer lines, I think. I get a little bit more flow with this reducer. So the idea for me is anytime I'm going to do texture, I'm using the regular illustration reducer. And then whenever I want more flow, If I'm going to do more freehand stuff with not so much texture, then I'm going to favor more the high performance reducer. Now, even though I'm doing, it seems like a dark brown right now, once I get to the tinting process, and that's later on where I'm going to go right over all of these tones, and I'm going to maybe give the eye a more grayish green color or green hue, and all of this is going to show through. And you don't have to completely abandon some of the texture. You can still get like some of this color underneath here. You can still build it up with some texture. And later on I'm going to enhance this with some more of this color. This is all freehand now. See how nice that cleans it up? I'm lazy to use shields. I prefer this. Now I'm going to enhance some of this texture here, just a little bit right on the lower edge where it meets the fold. Okay, and I think I'm going to reserve a little bit more shading for later on, because what I want to do is I want to get some of the pure darks right now, which is basically black. Then I want to, actually I'm going to tint first. Then we're going to go to pure black, and then I'm going to use this color to shadow some of the eyelashes, which are going to be almost pure black, and I think that's going to finish it off there. So the next step is tinting. We're going to do tinting now. Okay, I want to give you a little tip on mixing. I know it sounds simple, but if you're going to mix in the cup, it's a good practice to put a little bit of reducer first. The idea here is that a lot of times if you're mixing some colors that are a little bit thick, for example, the white sometimes has a little bit more thickness to it. Sometimes it coats the metal and it doesn't mix all the way. Sometimes you get thick paint inside the channel that doesn't get mixed in right, and what happens is sometimes you're trying to spray and you're not getting that flow because the paint isn't mixed thoroughly. So this is a good practice to do. And now I'm going to get a little bit of color. The idea here is to tint some of the color. We don't need a lot. Okay. Now that little bit of reducer was good enough, but if you need more, for tinting you don't need a whole lot, so you can over reduce it a little bit. Okay, and now we're going to do some little bit of green over the eye. Now if you see, when you put it over that brown, it almost turns into a black. And that's the whole idea of it being a sort of an underpainting. And then some of this overspray that we're getting inside there, we can erase that also. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and erase some of this green. I'm going to mix some red, and I'm going to do some tinting around the tear ducts and a little bit of pink around the eyelids, and then maybe some veins to give the eye the look like it's bloodshot or something. And then that's it. After that, we'll do some more. I'll demonstrate. We've mixed some red now, and now I'm going to continue with the tinting process. And what we want to do here, right in the tear ducts, you want to be careful. Work around the highlights as best as you can. You can blend in a little bit into the eye. And if you do get some of it over the highlights, you can come in again and erase yet again. Now here, once it starts getting a little bit more critical and you start doing more detail, I tend to want to thin my paint a little bit more. You know what, I want to take this time to talk a little bit about reduction. A lot of people, that's a big question everyone has about how do I reduce my colors. Well, there is no perfect reduction. For me, the rule of thumb is if you want to work lower air pressure, if you prefer, some people prefer a little bit lower air pressure, they feel like it's more careful, a little bit more controlled, then usually if it's lower air pressure, then I want more reducer, so the paint's a little bit thinner. Then the other thing is, if you want to work, if you prefer working at higher air pressure, then you're going to need a little bit more body to your paint. So you're going to want your paint a little bit thicker. Now, the other thing is, some people want their paint, they want to work at a high air pressure, but at the same time, they want their paint thinner and a little bit weaker. So in those cases, you want to use a transparent base. The transparent base will weaken the color, it'll make it more transparent, and at the same time, it'll maintain the body so that you're not having the spidering issue that you get when you lower the when you thin it out too much. So that's the idea, and that's how it's been, and it's always worked out for me. So just keep that in mind. Now I'll give you an example. For here, where we want to work, let's say we want to do a little bit of veining with this color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to thin it out a little bit more, and also I'm going to put a little bit of brown in it. Because it's a little too saturated for doing some of the veins. And now I'm going to thin it out a little bit more. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lower the air pressure a little bit more too. You know, sometimes I'll really push the paint and see how far I can reduce it before it starts to spider on me, or and sometimes you can do it. You can push it really far. It did spider on me a little bit, so I'm going to lower the air pressure a little more. See, this is very controlled. Not quite as defined a line as when you do it with the higher air pressure, but at this scale it's perfect. You use a little bit if you want to tint some of the flesh. Okay, and I think that's about it for the red. Now I think what I want to do is the white of the eye. We want to give it a little bit of shading. The eye is never pure white, although there's barely any pure white right now here because of all the overspray, but we want to knock it back a little bit more with some shading to get more form in the eye. And then after that, we're going to come in with some of the eyelashes, and I think we're going to call it done after that. Okay, now we're going to do a little bit of the white of the eye. It's a little too white. We want to get a little bit of form in there. So what we want to do is get a little bit of the bottom here. We almost want no pure white in there. Okay, and then here on the corner, a lot of the eyelashes are casting a shadow here. And let's see if we could get some, it's working pretty good for the eyelashes too. Now this color was mixed with black, about a drop of black, a drop of sepia, and a little bit of blue violet, about a drop or two of blue violet just to cool it down a little bit. You can even use this color to darken some of the eye here. I also reduced it quite a lot, and the idea is lower air pressure and thinner paint so I can get a little bit more detail, a little bit more control. Now here we want to do the reflection of the eyelashes above. I'm not going to get all the eyelashes here because I want to save it. This mix is a little bit too thin. I want to be able to get some of the eyelashes in more like one stroke. So that's going to mean I need my paint a little bit thicker, and I'm going to have to raise the air pressure up a little bit. At the same time, I encourage you to experiment. You might find a nice setting that works better for you. Everybody works differently. So take what I'm showing you as a guide, and you know, maybe you'll come up with your own way, something that works better for you. You can use this color over some of those darker browns now, because it won't look pure black. It'll kind of just look like a darker brown, as long as you don't oversaturate it. Just want to darken some of these sections here. A little line inside of that dark brown. Okay, we just added a little bit more black to that same mix, and it's a little bit stronger now. I'm able to get some of the hair now in one shot. And these are basically just dagger strokes. Okay, now while I'm at it, I'm going to erase a little bit more. Put a little bit of random highlights here in the eye. Sometimes the eye actually has a dome shape, and it'll catch a little bit of a highlight right around the edge of the, especially if you're wearing contact lenses. And this to make the eye look more wet around the edge here. And around some of the bases of the hair here, put a little highlight there so it looks like almost the way a pore would have a highlight. Now I'm going over some of those highlights that I already erased earlier, and I'm just going over them again. What happens is a lot of them caught some overspray, so now I can erase over them again, and I get this nice layered effect. Well, I mean, the sky's the limit. You can just keep going and going. Sometimes this is a good example where I could show you where some of these highlights, they're a little bit more abrupt. I could come in with some white and soften them up a little bit, but at the same time, I think you guys get the idea. And you know, take what I've demonstrated here and apply it to your own renderings and see what you guys come up with, and take it a little step further. Just know that you can take it as far as you want, or you could even simplify things. You know, you could have done this whole thing all freehand without all the texture, and it still would look like an eye. It still would look pretty dynamic. But if you want super photorealism, the way to go is go ahead and use a lot of erasing techniques. Maybe you want to use more of that the illustration reducer, and if you want to do more freehand stuff and not so much erasing, then go with the high performance reducer. I'm really excited about Createx illustration colors. In fact, this is the first water-based paint that actually feels and performs like solvent-based. I showed you what you can do with the paint here. Now it's your turn to give it a try. For more information, go to createxcolors.com, and thank you for watching.